Welcome to the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast. Over 90% of today's home buyers start their buyer journey online. Here we talk with not only industry experts, but also your fellow home builder marketers to learn how you can succeed in our incredibly competitive digital world. And now, here are your hosts, Greg Bray and Kevin Weitzel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
And I'm Kevin Weitzel with Outhouse.
And we are excited today to have joining us Sebastian Jimenez. Sebastian is the CEO of Rilla. Welcome, Sebastian. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you guys for having me on here. Super excited.
Well, Sebastian, for those who haven't met you yet, why don't we start off with that quick kind of background and overview about yourself?
Yeah, so great to meet everybody who's never heard of me or Rilla. So I'm Sebastian, the founder and CEO of Rilla. Rilla, very succinctly, we are the leading speech analytics software for outside sales. So for home builders, what that means is when your community managers, when your design consultants, when they're out there talking to prospective homeowners, home buyers in the model homes and the design studios, wherever they're talking to them, they will be recording their conversations with our mobile app through their phones or tablets or Apple Watches. And we will be using AI to automatically transcribe, analyze, and give them feedback to help them improve their conversations, to help them improve their sales, to automate a lot of their follow-up and their CRM entry, and to help their managers do what we call virtual mystery shops that are 100 times faster, better, and more productive than the traditional mystery shops, which take quarters to set up and you only get very little data. So think about this like a 24/7 mystery shop that you're running, and all of your salespeople can improve every single day instead of every quarter.
So before we jump into all that nerdiness, I foresee that we're going to get into some solid nerd factor here. Before we get into that, I need one factoid about you that has nothing to do with work, the home building industry, or your family. Something about you that our listeners can learn today.
I used to do stand-up comedy, and I learned everything I know about business from stand-up comedy.
You know the secret to comedy, right? Timing. Oh, wait, I did it wrong. I'm supposed to wait until somebody answers, and then I come in with timing.
One is timing. Timing's like everybody knows about, but the one that's, I would say, like an overlooked asset in comedy is the sound of your voice. The best comedians, if you look at Chris Rock or Jerry Seinfeld, they're really great examples. Like Chris Rock, when he started out, he wasn't that popular, and then he started leaning into it, like,
Yes.
like it's like, and Seinfeld, like, you know. So the voice is super important in comedy as well, like the sound of your voice.
You know, it's funny that you say that because the circle back also comes from comedy too. And you want to circle back to the original thing. You come out and, my wife and I have got a divorce, and, then it circles back to the end, and here's why we got a divorce. Same thing happens when you're selling, is that you find out that pain point, and then you circle back to that pain point. This solution takes care of all the things in your problem. So the circle back does apply. So maybe you're onto something. Maybe our salespeople need to get more into comedy and stand up, go to open mic nights.
This was not the actual idea for Rilla, but the precursor to the idea for Rilla. So I used to do stand-up comedy from 2014 to 2018. It says in my degree, I got a degree in business, economics, all that crap, but I never went to class. That's just like so my parents didn't get too pissed off at me. So I was always doing stand-up comedy, skipping class. Comedians, one thing that they do, if you're really serious about it, is you're always recording your sets. You put your phone there, you record your set, and then you review the set, use a game film, and then you take notes about what you could have done better. The original idea for Rilla, I still have my little joke notebook, and I used to write my joke ideas and my ideas for general things. I remember writing, I was like, oh, what if we could have a recorder, but get some light layers of analytics on top of the recorder so you could review it a little bit faster. So it told you here's where the punchlines are at just by analyzing the language. Here's the laughter, noise to laughter ratio kind of thing. So you could see how well you did and gives you a little score. So there's a lot of parallels between stand-up comedy and sales. And the original idea came from there. And the other thing is comedians, if you look at comedians, they make it sound so natural. When you go and watch a comedian on a stage, it almost feels like they're improvising. Newsflash, they're not. They're not improvising. In order to prepare an hour of material when you see somebody on Netflix, that's taking that comedian at least a year to prepare that hour of material. And every week, they're just trying to come up with 3 new minutes of material. It's highly scripted, highly trained, highly coached, and they're reviewing game film constantly to improve. And so the same with sales. People think, I don't want to sound scripted. I don't want to sound scripted. Yeah, the point is, if you get really, really good at following processes and following specific words or word tracks, you actually sound supernatural because you sound like a pro, just like an actor does in a movie. We like to think of sales as a sport, and the sport of sales is all about how you can actually fine-tune that craftsmanship with your words to sound really like a pro that sounds like supernatural.
And my last question before we truly dive in, regardless of how popular they are, give me your 2 favorite comedians that are out there, living or in the past.
So I'll tell you 2 living. One is Dave Chappelle. The other one is Shane Gillis. And then in the past, I would say George Carlin, Richard Pryor, and the entire crew of the Monty Python crowd. Yeah.
Those are all correct answers.
Yeah.
All right, well, Sebastian, let's dive in a little deeper because I think it's fascinating that you use this idea of how can I have technology help me improve, and then branch out into, okay, who else can use technology to help them improve and
Yeah.
things there. Isn't it, though, a little weird to know you're being recorded? Does the act of monitoring change the behavior in such a way that it's no longer accurate? Or do we forget enough that we're being recorded that that doesn't happen?
That's an amazing question. So, Greg, what you just described there is the actual Hawthorne effect. And the Hawthorne effect is an effect in psychology that people figured out when they were trying to do experiments, and you're recording people when they're doing experiments to study their behavior. They realized that when people realized they were being recorded, they would change their behavior. And that's called the Hawthorne effect. When people know that they're being reviewed or they're being watched, their fight or flight senses get triggered. That's why people fear public speaking, because they know they're being watched by other people. That's why you see people in reality TVs, they're acting up because they know they're being recorded in a camera. What's really fun about the Hawthorne effect is that your brain cannot stay in fight or flight for long. So your brain literally gets tired of being in fight or flight. So after about a few hours of being exposed to the fact that you're being recorded, your brain completely forgets about the fact that you're being recorded, and it kind of goes back to its natural habitat. So to answer your question more directly, absolutely. When salespeople are being recorded for the first time, senses get heightened. I need to be on my toes. And you actually see an uptick in performance, by the way, when you see that salespeople get recorded. Just the fact that they know they're being recorded, boom, it goes up, right? Because they know they're being watched. It's like an actor being like, oh, we're filming now. Like, oh, wow, I need to be on my game. This is not practice anymore. Then the effect goes down and you see the numbers go back down. It's like the natural habitat. And then after a quarter or so, it takes about 21 days to build a habit. So think of all the little habits that you want to build as a professional salesperson. It takes about a quarter to build all the little habits that you need in order to actually improve and make the coaching actually second nature. So every single salesperson that we launch with at first, they're a little bit fearful, like I'm going to be recorded. They forget about the fear after a couple hours, and then they start improving and they become quite addicted to the tool.
But the same thing happens when the boss walks in and is say, I'm going to sit in the office today and watch you work, right?
Yeah. It's the exact same concept. So what we've seen is, for instance, in home building, the effect is not as powerful because usually their managers are already there. And they're already kind of used to the whole like, oh, a mystery shop could come anytime, any second. And they kind of know when it's a mystery shop most of the time. The thing you don't get with the mystery shop is the mystery shop, you never get so much exposure that you actually get that true behavior because you're only doing it like once every quarter. With this, you're literally, it's like you're burning that out pretty quickly.
So, question for you. When you have AI that's recording a conversation, does the computer understand the nuances of just casual conversation to underlying subjects? To give you an example, somebody walks into a motorcycle shop, we look at their footwear. Are they wearing flip-flops?
Yep.
Guess what? You can't ride a motorcycle home when you're wearing flip-flops. Yep. So are you looking at that, or are they wearing a fancy watch? Can they afford what they're looking at?
Yep.
Is AI discrediting that, or are they just kind of taking into note that Kevin complimented a client on their watch, or noticed that they were wearing a BYU shirt and that you're glad that they lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament this year? Something along those lines. Is it AI picking up those nuances and then just ignoring it and placing it aside and looking only at the sales items? Or is it saying, hey, they're wasting time talking about sports things, when in all reality, that's how you get into the psyche of that buyer?
Great question. So two things there. So AI for Rilla only works on actual spoken language. So we're not recording any video, it's just audio. So something like noticing that the customer's wearing flip-flops, unless the customer calls it out, the salesperson calls it out, it's not going to be processed by the AI. So there is a component of the human being actually being able to see what's going on. 80% of language is body language. So we're not capturing the body language, the actual language that's being spoken, that's what we're capturing. When it comes to the language that's being spoken, let's geek out here for a little bit. Everybody's heard the term, these calls are being recorded for quality and training purposes. This has been happening since the 1990s. And since the 1990s, businesses from every single industry have been very interested in how do they actually improve the language of their service people or their salespeople to actually improve their conversations. We've had rudimentary statistical analysis on phone calls, like how long and like the durations. Then in 2012, people started getting a little bit fancier with AI, doing like basic keyword tracking. And we've basically had like basic keyword tracking for about a decade, where you could actually see if they said the right words or the right phrases. But that's very limited because, like you said, Kevin, human language is so much more flexible than basic keywords, right? when ChatGPT came out in 2022, that's when you actually started getting really close to actual natural language understanding. So now the answer to your question is absolutely yes. The AI understands the natural language of the conversation. It understands sarcasm. It's like having an assistant sales manager. The way we think about it is you have a head coach who's a sales manager, sales director. And what Rilla does very simply is we're kind of like an assistant coach who's out on the field every single day when the game is happening. And we're just taking all the footage and capturing everything there is to capture. And any question that the head coach has about the conversation, they can just ask their assistant AI. And you could literally ask the question like, hey, how did the salesperson build rapport in the conversation? And the AI will tell you they noticed that the customer was wearing a particular shirt from a particular sport, and that helped navigate the conversation. It'll actually notice if you missed building rapport. It'll say like, hey, the customer mentioned something about their dog and the salesperson completely disregarded it. Rilla, we have the largest data set of sales conversations that's ever been recorded or transcribed or analyzed ever. We have millions of face-to-face sales conversations captured between customers and salespeople. And we run these analysis, like what are the top performers doing differently than everybody else? One of the things that we just published is that when the customer walks in with a pet and the salesperson acknowledges the pet and kind of plays with the dog, it's like, oh, what's their name? How old is she? When the salesperson does this, it gives you like 5 percentage points of increase in conversion rate. Yes, building rapport is super important. The AI will actually understand all the nuances of the actual spoken conversation.
We did something similar, but with using a human factor, where we would be within earshot of listening to a salesperson talk on the floor. And then when they were done and we did the recap, they would always like come in nervous, like, how'd I do? My questions were always real simple. What was the wife's name? What were the kids' names?
Yeah.
If you can't tell me that stuff, then you weren't listening to that client because they said it.
Yeah.
I remembered what they were.
So much about sales is people think sales is about talking. A lot of sales is actually not about talking, it's about listening. One of the studies that we published as well, and this is based on, again, more than 1 million conversations that were processed and analyzed at the time. We realized that 1% of top performers in the country that are generating millions and millions and millions of dollars in revenue for their businesses, they are talking between 45 and 65% of the time versus the customer. The average salespeople, they're talking between 75 and 85% of the time. Because they're talking so much, they're actually not paying attention to what the customer is saying. And that's why they miss a lot of details.
Sebastian, just for clarity for our listeners, you guys are in multiple industries beyond just new construction. So when you talk about these millions, you're not talking about just new construction sales.
Correct.
You're talking about other industries as well, just for context.
Yeah, so we're very big in home remodeling and home improvement, other kind of in-home sales, kind of retail sales as well. So yeah, that's including a lot of different industries.
I got to call you out on something. You don't come across your typical pot smoking, high school burnout stand-up comedian. You obviously have some sort of education here. Where'd you go to school?
New York University. Like I said, my degree says I got a degree in business, but if you ask my professors, they beg to disagree.
So Sebastian, you mentioned something that I hadn't considered when you were doing your quick intro, and you talked about actually taking these recordings, not just from a coaching standpoint, but being able to then use them to update the CRM and the notes and keep some of that data. So Kevin just gave the example of the salesperson forgot the name of the kids. But if it's in the recording, it'll be there in the CRM for later. Am I understanding correctly the opportunity there?
That is exactly correct. So for instance, in home building, salespeople need to be very good at following up with their leads, their A leads or B leads or C leads, and you want to make sure that you're actually following up with value, right? Not just like, hey, I'm checking in and wanted to see what you guys are thinking. And everybody knows that every sales manager, sales director knows the notes that the sales before pulling in the CRM are probably not as comprehensive as they could be. It's kind of annoying, right? It's like human beings, we don't like sitting down and taking notes and stuff. It's kind of annoying. You just want to do your job as a salesperson. So what Rilla does is you can prompt our AI, we call him Rick AI. You can say, hey, Rick, every time of conversation processes, I want you to make sure that you capture the homeowner's name. I want you to make sure that you tell me if they have dogs. What are they looking for? Why are they looking for a new home? Why are they looking to move from their existing place? And he'll give you like super detailed, it'd be general. You can have it rate your leads automatically from an A to a C to a B based on some parameters that you set. So you can have a lot of automation from the CRM. The salesperson still needs to go in there to make sure that everything's being updated properly. But I think, in the near future, we're going to have it such that salesperson doesn't need to worry about it. It's just going to happen automatically.
So Sebastian, in home building, of course, we've got the on-site salesperson that's in like the model home, touring the community. And then we've got the online salesperson that's dealing with the chatting and the phone calls and some of those things. Do you guys help with that side of it as well? Or is it more just the on-site?
We help with the calls, anything that's an online sales, like a Zoom meeting or a phone call. We don't market that much because there's so many different providers. Like, again, the call center and anything that's on a phone call, that's a very well studied kind of space where people have been using speech analytics software forever. We're really pioneers when it comes to like in-person outside sales, where the most fun sales happen, where you get to actually walk around. It's an hour-long meeting. You get to discover a lot about that prospective customer. And so, yes, it does work. The short answer is, but there's plenty other solutions that also work for the call center, and Real is just reigning supreme on the outside sales front.
As you guys have been analyzing some of this data, you mentioned some of the things that top salespeople are doing a little bit different. What are some of like the common mistakes that new home salespeople that you see and you're going, oh my gosh, we got to fix this now, or these people are toast?
Talk ratios, number one. Talk ratio, salespeople talk way too much. Number two is, well, now that you know that you need to figure out how to make it a conversation and not just a monologue, you have to figure out how to do it. There's a Jedi mind trick that the top performers use, which is like something that average salespeople miss all the time, which is just asking open-ended questions. Top performers, they ask 25 open-ended questions per conversation. Average salespeople only ask 5. They think that discovery happens at the beginning. You just talk about discovery and then you kind of check the box. Okay, I asked 5 questions. Like, what brings you here today? What seems to be wrong with your home today? What are you looking for? Like, and then they just do the discovery and then proceed. Top performers, what they do is they understand that sales is ongoing discovery. You're getting to meet this other human being, and then the story unfolds proactively. And it's always discovery. When they come in, you're discovering. When you're presenting the homes, you're discovering what they like, what they don't like. When you're presenting prices and you're presenting financing options, you are also discovering. And so they ask 5 times more open-ended questions than average salespeople because they just keep discovery ongoing. Another thing that's super critical, the talk speed of salespeople. We figured out that the average talk speed of top performers of salespeople when they're closing sales is about 184 words per minute, which is a little bit faster than the average human talk speed, which is about 156 words per minute. For that to make sense to people, like imagine listening to a podcast at 1.2x speed. That's how a salesperson talks who's a top performer. A little bit faster, but not too fast, not too fast, because if you go too fast, then you're actually going to start dropping. What I'm talking now is about 214 words per minute. That's my average talk speed. When I'm in an actual sales conversation, I have to remind myself to slow down because I talk a little bit too fast. But if you talk a little bit too slow, you have to speed up a little bit to kind of get the uptake of the conversation. And usually top performers, average performers, that's an easy thing for them to do. What's really hard for salespeople, and this is like something that they miss all the time. What we saw, which was really interesting, was the talk speed of salespeople generally starts at around the same. But once you get into the final third of the conversation, which is typically when objections start coming up, because that's when you present price and you present how much it's going to cost, and that's when objections start piling up. That's when you actually get into the meat and potatoes of the sales conversation. What happens is average salespeople, their talk speed goes up. They actually raise their talk speed in the final third of the conversation. Top performers, they keep it. They keep it super steady. And the reason for that is fight or flight. Present price, objections come. Well, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. Well, I want to move into a home today, and this was not going to be ready for like another 12 months. Well, yada, 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 yada. Average performers, they tend to speed up because they get nervous. And they start, well, this is really the home of your dreams. We can get you financing options. Like, what do we got to do? Top performers, they go like, okay, so this price doesn't work for you. What do you mean by that? And they start going back to open-ended questions, and they don't try to debate the objection. They try to discover what's wrong, what's not working about this. Objections are normal. Top performers' objections are like breathing. It's like you have to find where the customer is in their heads, and you have to discover your way through it. So the top performers, they keep their talk speed steady over the course of the conversation. Average performers, they kind of tend to spike up because they get nervous at the final third. So we have a whole blog of insights that we're constantly publishing.
Does your solution provide any kind of feedback? And I know this is kind of a weird question, but on the recall, talking about how you go to a 214 average talk speed in your normal speech, is the recall of the recipient of that speech pattern, are they recalling less because you speed up past that 1.5 or whatever that number would be? If you hit the 2.0 button, are you losing some of the recall information and missing out on the opportunity to have those stuff really nail home?
It's that, and also the customer starts getting nervous. They're like, this person's talking too fast. And yet one of it is I don't understand what they're saying. But imagine if I'm talking at a certain talk speed. Like I talk fast, so people know like I'm not nervous when I'm talking fast. But imagine I was talking slow and then I start talking fast. It's like when you find your kids doing something wrong and you're like, ask them what happened. They start talking faster because they're nervous. So when you start talking faster than your regular speed, The customer, it's like in their chimp brain, the lizard brain of the human being knows this other person's nervous, and then they start getting nervous. And when you get them nervous because you're nervous, then there's not a great pathway to getting somebody to make a buying decision, because fear is the killer of all buying sales emotion. You don't want to put people in a fight or flight state. So that's the main concern here when you start raising your talk speed, is you start making the buyer nervous.
Sebastian, we've got potentially a sales manager, a sales trainer, someone who's responsible for helping the sales team improve. There's already so much data out there, and I can see somebody going, oh, wow, this would be really interesting. And then all of a sudden they've got 100 conversations to review and just almost overwhelmed with new data to be able to do that. What are some ways that this can be useful without total just avalanche of new data to work with?
That's a great question. So one of the things we realized when we built this product, so we call it a speech analytics product. What we realize is sales people, sales managers are not mathematical people. They're verbal people by nature. They're linguistic. If you were to measure their IQ, they would be indexing super high on linguistic intelligence, because that's their job. That's their sport. They have to be really good at spoken language. But in math, that's just not a part of their job. People use calculators. Like, that's just not your job. And so when you give them an analytics product, it's very annoying. Verbal linguistic versus what do these numbers mean? And it was very annoying when we started this product for our users. You give me all these numbers. What do I do with these numbers? And this is actually super helpful after ChatGPT came out, because you can actually now have an AI assistant, Rick AI. He can interpret the numbers for you. So instead of you just like giving analytics, you just have Rick AI. Imagine having like a ChatGPT, literally, and you're asking questions not about the internet, but things about all of your conversations. And you're a manager, you could be like, hey, what are the top objections that happened last week? Because I'm about to prepare for my sales training meeting. And Rick AI looks at all your conversations from the last week and said, here are the top objections. It's about mortgage rates. Interest rates are really high right now. So people are, more afraid. It's about wait times because the homes are not ready, whatever it is. And so then you just ask that question and you get answers, because analytics are about getting you answers. So our product is no longer an analytics product, is a verbal interface where you can interact with the computer, and the computer just gives you the answers that you need. Kind of like an assistant. The assistant goes and checks all the conversations and gives you a result of all the conversations, and it's all verbal. The other thing is, what we found that managers absolutely love doing, they become addicted to this. They love going in and reviewing the actual conversations. We call them Rillas. So a conversation that's recorded on Rilla, salespeople, managers, they don't call them conversations, they call them Rillas, because it's a conversation plus this analytics layer. It's almost like you're a bionic kind of like Iron Man, and you could see a tech layer upon the world, because we tell you all these statistics on the conversation, like how fast did they talk, how much did they talk, and so you can review a conversation very quickly. An hour, 2 hour long sales conversation takes about 3 minutes to review when you turn it into a Rilla, because you have your AI assistant. You can see like what happened here. So what you find is managers are able to review 100% of the sales conversations that their team is having every day. Let's say you manage a team of like 10 salespeople. They're each going to have maybe like one conversation a day. That's just 10 conversations. It would take 10 hours to review the whole thing, but with Rilla, it takes about 3 minutes to review each one. So it just takes 30 minutes to review every single one of the conversations. We've made a lot of improvements over the years. I love working out and I love being productive and I love kind of going out in the world, but I saw that Rilla was like very static. You had to be on your computer to use Rilla. So most recently we launched a hands-free, we call it hands-free Rillas, where you could now put your headphones on, you're driving to and from work 15 minutes, and you could talk to our AI friend Rick, and Rick will respond back. You could perform the review of the conversation completely without touching your phone. So we have a lot of customers who are now playing golf, they're working out while they're doing their Rillas, because it's quite an addictive game. If you're a sales manager, you're like, this is so cool. I could be doing my reviews while I'm playing golf or while I'm driving or while I'm working out. Just this morning, I was doing my laundry because I'm traveling today, and I was just doing a bunch of reviews of all my sales calls from the last week.
So, Sebastian, this has been fascinating. You've obviously given this a lot of thought, a lot of work. I'm tempted to ask you for one last joke before we go, but I don't know if that's too much of a callback to the beginning. See what I did there, Kevin?
The biggest joke I've ever told is when I told my parents that I was dropping out of my job to start a company, and they were not very happy about it. And you know how funny that joke is when you realize I'm Dominican, so I have Hispanic parents and a Hispanic mom, and they took the chancla and just started threatening me with that crap. So, yeah.
Well, Sebastian, do you have like one last piece of advice for salespeople and maybe their managers today, whether they use a tool like this or not, just some things that could help them be better at sales?
Yeah, so it goes back to one of the questions that you asked me about. What do you do with all this data? So what I would recommend with managers is that when you are coaching people, one of the things that we saw is that the best managers, when they use our product and when they're coaching people in general, there's a lot of things that managers discover that their salespeople are not doing right when they start using a tool like Rilla to review every single one of the conversations. You start noticing all the little fine little details that they're missing. They didn't mention that you didn't talk to the dog. They talked too much. They raised their voice. All these little things. My number one recommendation is it takes 21 days to build a habit, and you cannot build 100 habits at the same time. So what I would recommend to sales managers is every time you're coaching somebody, focus on one thing. Just focus on one thing. If they're talking too much, just focus on the talk ratio. Let's lower that. And let's just focus on that for this month with this person. And then once they get that right, and it becomes a habit and second nature, then move on to something else. And that's what I tell managers, like, hey, don't get feedback on everything because you're going to overwhelm your salespeople with too much data, too much things to do. So it's one thing at a time. Great coaching is all about building great habits and helping your team build great habits. So one at a time, not all at once, but one at a time.
Awesome. Great advice, regardless of what we're trying to do as we try to improve.
Yeah.
Well, Sebastian, if somebody wants to learn more and get in touch or connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Go to Rilla.com. That's RILLA.com and book a demo with one of our highly trained sales consultants who will show you how Rilla could potentially help your business. Every single call is reviewed on Rilla by me. So I will probably see you on that call when I'm doing my laundry.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Sebastian, for sharing with us today. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
And I'm Kevin White with Outhouse. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about how Blue Tangerine and Outhouse can help you generate more qualified home buyer leads, visit bluetangerine.com and outhouse.net. If you've enjoyed our show today, please tell a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to join us again on the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast.